Testament leading towards things that are going to happen in the end times. But it says in Luke 21:28, but when these things begin to take place, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing nigh. So, recently in prayer, and I spent an extended time just seeking God for 30 days. Just to say, what is on your heart, God? And in that time, the Lord showed me quite a lot of things. I'm not going to share them all now, because they might unfold as we go along. But at this particular time, the Lord was really clear. He said to me, we have just finished a 7-year cycle. From 2017 to 2024, he said that was a 7-year cycle. And he said, and we are about to start a new one. He termed the new cycle a redemptive cycle. That it was going to be a time where he himself was going to come and do things that had been stolen in the previous 7 years of very difficult hardships, trials, tribulations, tests, stresses, and things that had happened in people's lives, but that he was particularly going to use this 7 years to actually pay back what had been stolen away by the enemy in the last 7 years. So the impression I got that this is that this would be a time of great favour for those who had been found faithful through the last 7 difficult years. Faithful to him, faithful to his word, faithful to following him, hadn't got caught up in other things, hadn't kind of lost their way, their love hadn't gone cold, etc. But it would be the exact opposite of that for those who had not remained faithful, and also for the wicked. Or actually more, he said, my enemies. He was very clear, my enemies. This will be a time of very difficult time for those who have not been faithful and who count themselves as my enemy. So I was like, wow, okay, well that's quite cool in some ways, because obviously if you have been following the Lord and you've remained faithful to him, then this is the time, honestly, I mean it, pray for anything, sick people in your family, people that have wandered away, the people who were in the faith but lost their way, things that you had prophesied over many years that haven't come to fruition, things that were sort of felt like they were out of your reach, etc. It's like go back into the prayer closet and start again with your prayers and faith, believing that this is the time of fulfillment for those prayers. So that was great. I was sitting in that for a couple of weeks and just thinking about it and just how great that was. But I was aware that there is a downside to this, and that is that as God starts to pour out his Spirit, those that are not right with him, those that don't know him, that have rejected him on purpose, etc., it was the beginning of judgment. It was the beginning of the outpouring of God actually saying to his enemies, that's enough. So then the Lord led me to study the events described in the book of Daniel, specifically Daniel 9 and 12, and that's what I'm going to share with you tonight. Okay. So I'll be referring to an article that I read by this person called Jonathan Remnant. I studied quite a lot of things, and but I like the way this particular article was quite succinct, so I will be using some of it through what I'm going to say. So if you've got your Bibles with you, turn to Daniel 9, and I'm going to start in Daniel 9:24. So this is what the Lord really took me to write to this scripture. So he wanted to show me something, and he said, 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city, to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the holy place. So, one thing I realised as I was doing my study, there's a lot of people that believe everything in Daniel has already been accomplished. That basically everything was accomplished centuries and centuries ago, and that prophecy is no longer live. But having read through some of their arguments and everything else, I actually, although I could understand why they'd sort of come to some of these conclusions, I couldn't agree with what they were saying. So there's many other people, myself included, who believe that the 70 weeks of Daniel 9, 24 to 27 remain relevant today, and many people still believe that the last week or 7 years that was prophesied for the 77s has not yet been accomplished and awaits a future fulfillment. Now, one of the reasons for that is, has the holy city finished transgressions, put an end to sin, has there been atoned for wickedness, and has everlasting righteousness been brought in, and has all vision, prophet, and prophecy been sealed up, and has the most holy place of Jerusalem been anointed? Well, I'd have to say no. There is no evidence to say that that has happened. So therefore, I don't believe that this could possibly be something that's already been accomplished. Because God has not achieved all these purposes for his people, the Israelites, the Jews, and the city of Jerusalem. So in Daniel 9:27, it tells us that in the midpoint of this last week or 7 years, a future ruler will desecrate a Jewish temple. It says, he will, the Antichrist, confirm a covenant with many for 7 years. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and at the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. So, the people that believe this has already happened say that the Greek ruler, Antiochus Epiphanes, fulfilled this prophecy on September 6, 171 BC, when he offered a pig as a sacrifice on the altar of the Jewish temple. They say that was the fulfillment of Daniel 9:27. But why then would the Lord himself say to his disciples in Matthew 24 that Daniel's 70th week remained unfulfilled in his day, which was 200 years after Antiochus defiled the Jewish temple? Because this is what Jesus said in Matthew 24:15. About the end of the age and his return to earth, Jesus refers to Daniel's prophecy about the desecration of the temple as a sign of his coming. So when you see in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation spoken through the prophet Daniel, when you see, let the reader understand, and then he goes on to say, for then there will be great distress, unequalled from the beginning of the world until now, and never be equalled again. So, Jesus is speaking about a time to come, or else he would be actually having to say that 200 years ago that already happened and there's going to be no more things that are devastating to the world or as bad as what happened then. But now we've seen the First World War, the Second World War, we've seen communism take over, we've seen all kinds of atrocities, genocides, we've seen Hiroshima with an atom bomb dropped on it. You know, I don't think you can say that, you know, the battle that took place at that time was never to be equalled again. So it does seem clear that Jesus is speaking about something that will happen in the future. When you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, how could he say that about something that happened 200 years ago? In 2 Thessalonians 2:3-4, Paul identifies the one who will desecrate the temple as the man of lawlessness, who is the same person that is referred to as the beast and the Antichrist in Revelation. He says this, don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. He will oppose and exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. Now, I don't think that happened in the past. In 2 Thessalonians 2:5 it says, Paul speaking, "Don't you remember that when I was with you, I used to tell you these things, and now you know what is holding him back, so that he may be revealed at the proper time." And then it says in 8, "And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord Jesus will overthrow with the breath of his mouth and destroy by the splendor of his coming." So unless Jesus reappeared, turned Pentecost Epiphanies into a crisp, a kebab, fried, then this did not happen and has not yet happened. Because it's really clear that it says that Jesus himself will destroy this lawless one, the one that desecrates the temple, at his second coming. So from these scriptures, we can see that the events of Daniel 9:27 will not be able to reach their full fulfillment until the time of the second coming. John the Apostle also wrote about this coming beast in about AD 95. He says, "Who will open his mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling," Revelation 13:6. And then in Revelation 19 to 20, John describes the future destruction by Jesus of this beast, who is the same figure who will desecrate the Jewish temple at the midpoint of Daniel's 70th week. It says, "And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth with their armies gathered to make war against him who was sitting on the horse and against his army." So that is Christ and his army. Who is that army? Us, the saints of Christ and the angels together are the army that will be there to make war against him who is sitting on the horse and against his army. Then in Revelation 19 to 20, "And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth with their armies gathered to make war against him who was sitting on the horse and against his army. And the beast was captured, and with it the false prophet, who in its presence had done the signs by which he deceived those who had received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped its image. These two were thrown alive into the lake of fire that burns with sulfur." Again, unless we know of a time where a mark was given to people that could not buy, sell, trade, or do all sorts of things and had to bow down and worship a beast, someone's idol or whatever, in recent times, since Christ was crucified, then this has not happened either. So John's vision agrees with what Paul prophesied in 2 Thessalonians 2:8, that Jesus will be the one to destroy the lawless one that desecrates the temple at his second coming. Therefore, the 70th week can't be fulfilled until there is a third temple in Jerusalem and the lawless one defiles it. Then Jesus will come and destroy the Antichrist. Now, a lot of people are sort of like, well, that will never happen. Except that actually there's a whole bunch of people who are trying to make it happen. There's actually people, Zionists and other people who, in Jerusalem, Jews and others alike, who have decided that there will be the rebuilding of this last temple, this third temple, and they already have the red heifers that they've been breeding for purity, ready for the sacrifice that will be made in that temple. So the reality is that there's people who want to make this a future event, who are planning, plotting, and working it out right now, how to do it. So since a key event in Daniel's 70th week of years has not yet occurred, the entire week must actually await a future fulfillment. Therefore, God's purposes for the nation of Israel and the city of Jerusalem also remain in effect and waiting for these events to take place. So though the Antichrist will come to power during this time, his reign will be short-lived. His end has already been decreed and will occur at the end of the tribulation. The event that will bring this 7-year period of tribulation to an end will be the return of Jesus at his second coming. When he returns, he will immediately judge the Antichrist, and after that, he will establish his millennial reign on the earth. When he does this, he will bring in an everlasting righteousness and anoint Jerusalem as the holy place, as the temple that he will dwell in. And that will complete the 70-week prophecy of Daniel. So right now, we sit somewhere between the end of the 69th week and the beginning of the 70th week. And while no one knows when the 70th week will begin, as we watch the events that are unfolding even now on earth, we know that day is drawing closer. So, this brings me to a little thing that happened in about September 23rd last year, 2023. The UN held a summit and put together a 7-year plan. So on September 23rd, the UN announced the need for 7 years of accelerated transformative action to achieve their 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which the UN put in place 8 years ago, 2015, and through which it intends to establish a one world government system. Below is I'm just going to read a quote in a minute from the UN's website regarding this summit on the 23rd of September last year, during which 191 world leaders committed to this 7-year treaty to achieve all of these sustainable development goals. This is their website. The SDG summit in September 2023 will signal a genuine turning point. It must mobilise the political commitment and breakthrough our world desperately needs. It must deliver a rescue plan for people and the planet. At the centre of this rescue plan, heads of state and government must recommit to 7 years of accelerated, sustained and transformative action, both nationally and internationally, to deliver on the promise of the SDGs. Leaders can show their resolve by adopting an ambitious and forward-looking political declaration at the SDG summit and presenting global and national commitments for this transformation. So, it is the question is this: is this UN 7-year treaty initiative prophetically significant? Well, I think in light of what the Lord was telling me about these 7-year cycle things and how one had just finished and another one was about to start, that there may be something in it. So the globalists are already beginning a 7-year commitment to their objectives, which they want to complete by 2030. It's called Agenda 2030. You can read the website, you can look it up, you can find out all about it. Their plan is a radical reformation of the world as we know it, and will include the elimination of cash to be replaced by a digital currency, the use of a comprehensive digital ID, which will carry all your health information, all your financial information, everything about you, where you were born, what you do, where you go, your license, everything. The implementation of 15-minute cities, which is basically a small area of land where people will be made to live. You will not be able to leave that place unless you have permission, and apparently everything we have and need will be in that 15-minute city. They are also starting an eradication of farmers around the world, telling them they can't farm, telling them they don't, that there's all these reasons why it's not going to work for their sustainable development goals. They're starting to make it very difficult. They're taking farms off people, and they are stopping food production under these guises of sustainable development goals. And their happy little catchphrase for all of this is, you will own nothing, but you will be happy. The only thing is, most people aren't very happy when people take everything off them. So I don't think people are going to be very happy at all. Now, I only bring this up because the 70th week of Daniel's prophecy remains unfulfilled, but also because of the convergence of this and a great many other signs pointing to the nearness of this coming tribulation. Most notably, the recent events that are unfolding in Israel, and also some might say that the eclipse was also a sign of something, and God's very clear that he puts signs in the heavens and on the earth to show us things, and people in ancient times always took notice of these signs. So, this is what I ask myself. Have we entered a significant 7-year period that leads up to the tribulation? Is the next 7 years, part of God's redemptive plan to do whatever he can to save those that are still in rebellion or don't know him or whatever? But while that is happening, there will be unprecedented trouble already, because the wicked are going to start feeling the effects of having turned away from God and rejecting the Messiah. Okay? Or, on the other hand, and we don't know this, have we even entered into the 7 years of the tribulation? Well, the only way we're going to know the answer to that is by watching Israel and seeing what happens in Israel. The prophetic sign of Christ's coming is about Israel. And so we'll soon know if something starts to happen on this temple, and more things happen as far as the enemies of Israel gathering on the borders and starting to attack Israel, and a coalition of nations that have decided to annihilate Israel, we will know that something really significant has been happening and is happening. The other really notable sign of how close we are getting to the end of this age is how truth has been thrown down in the last 7 years. Many people seem to have lost any ability to see where they are being absolutely duped. Think about this. Whenever in the history of humanity have people been so deceived that they will argue that you cannot tell or say what a woman is, or what a man is, or that a man can have a baby? I mean, we are talking about unprecedented loss of all rational mind and thinking when we get to this level. This has gone way beyond people's opinions and things, and now we are actually cracking into what is absolutely right in front of our face, and people totally denying the reality of it. So this is serious. But this has been explained. In 2 Thessalonians 2:9 it says, "The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie, and all the ways that wickedness deceives those who are perishing. They perish because they refused to love the truth and so be saved." The truth isn't a thought, a concept, it's a person. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." The Spirit says, "I am the Spirit of truth." The Word says, "I am the Word of truth." People who have refused these things will perish if they don't turn. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie, and so that all will be condemned who have not believed the truth but have delighted in wickedness. This is a serious, serious time for the world. Because it's all very well for an evil ruler and an evil dictator to be against the people. But when God himself is sending a delusion on people because of their hatred of the truth, because they've turned away from it, there is no remedy for that. There's no remedy for that unless the Lord himself comes and is as the truth and expels that lie. So, what is our part? Why are we gathered here? Why am I talking about this? Okay? Well, that army that comes back with the Lord, many times in the Bible they're called the elect, the chosen. God has chosen a people to be those people who come, who are with him at his coming. And as a prophetic person, I have my ear out to what is happening prophetically around the world. And there has been a worldwide prophetic call from God to raise up an army in his name. This army will be actually the true bride of Christ, the one without spot and wrinkle. Those that have consecrated themselves, purified themselves, have gone through the fire, who are willing to be, who have been willing, and I think the last 7 years is kind of almost part of this, who have been willing to take the tests and trials and stay faithful. Those that have been cleansed and purified by the difficulties. They will not be taken in by the propaganda, the lies, the manipulations and deceptions of our day, and they will remain faithful to Christ until his return, if it is while we are still here. This army will fight a comprehensive spiritual battle, while the earth's inhabitants will be subject to much physical and spiritual battles of many kinds. We won't be exempt from those things, but somehow within it, God will give us some type of supernatural power to be able to still work in the midst of total spiritual darkness. The Lord's army will fight to bring about the deliverance of many caught in all types of bondages and chains. And we will be there to help usher in his kingdom. So this will require much training, equipping and dedication of God's people to be able to stand against the evil rulers and powers led by the Antichrist spirit. So my question to you is, are you willing to join in this fight? Now, if you are, you will feel a real call on your life for this. Now, some people don't like spiritual warfare and they wonder why we even talk about it, and they hate all that stuff about battles and swords and things like that, and they want, why do people do this? And we don't need to be like that because Jesus just loves everybody. But the thing I'll say is this: when the Israelites went into the Jordan, God raised up an army. They all became an army. Not one of them was not part of that army. They were the army. They went in and they had to go in and conquer those lands. He didn't send someone else. He didn't send himself. He sent them as his army to take back that land that he had allocated to his people. So I think that not everyone will feel that call, but if you do, then it's time. That's all I'll say. It's time. Because that's what the Lord said to me. He said, it is time. It is time. It is time. So when we worship and sing, we're not doing it anymore just because we like singing, or because, I'm kind of like a worship girl and so I like to do a bit of worship. No, when we sing from now on, we will be battling in the spiritual realm. We will be singing, we will be prophesying, we will be decreeing, we will be speaking out as led by the Holy Spirit, and we will be warring in the heavenly realm. And my hope for this group and all that join us is that we will learn how to enter in to the heavenly realms and fight our fight there, because there's no point trying to fight it down here, because the battle is up there for humanity. It's only manifesting on the earth because of what's going on in the realms. Okay? So when we go in, we're not fighting against flesh and blood, we're fighting the principalities, the powers, the rulers of this age in the heavenly realm, because God has given us access to do that. He said that we could come into his presence. He said that we're seated with him in heavenly places. Okay, and we're going to have to learn how to take our fight up there. This is not a time for people to get fearful. This is not a time for people to go into anxiety, stress, and all that. But actually, this call is a call that will require courage, dedication, love, to walk in a level of honour and goodness towards all people with a pure heart, or we will become infected by the very thing that's infecting this world. So if you want to come as light, you've got to stay in the light. But we will have power to tear down strongholds and do all these things because God will give us that power. So we're going to start singing some songs. Got a good half an hour. And in that time, don't worry if we haven't got the words up and you don't know all the words, because this isn't really actually about the songs per se. It's about what they will do in the spiritual atmosphere that allow us to make decrees and speak and pray into the spiritual atmosphere. All right? And so don't worry if you don't know the words. Just go with what happens in the spirit, because we will be moving in and out of things in the spirit, okay? All right, so